2020 was a weird year. Many of us were housebound, not by choice, but because of a global pandemic. The video game industry saw a spike in consumption, and Nintendo was having a field day with it, selling millions of games, games like Animal Crossing, even adopting a podcast format. But it's also the year where Nintendo became familiar with the word Gigaleak. Someone managed to hack into their systems, and for months they leaked prototypes, source code, documentation, future plans, and much more from the Japanese company on 4chan forums. This is the story of an infamous hacker who was a nightmare for Nintendo, but also for Microsoft, and strangely for millions of parents. Oh yeah, this is going to be a weird, absurd, and somewhat unbelievable story. While the climax of the story takes place in 2020, to meet the man behind this brutal leak, we have to go back to 2015 and talk about something very unusual in these stories: toys for kids, specifically from the company Vtech. When a parent buys a tech-savvy toy for their child, they usually don't think about the consequences of putting their data inside these devices. But the curiosity of a hacker triggered this fear in hundreds of thousands of concerned parents. Vtech saw a breach of their security. Names, emails, passwords, and home addresses of nearly 6.4 million parents and children were in the hands of an unknown attacker. The attack had been achieved through one of the oldest and most well-known methods in the cybersecurity industry, SQL injection. When you go to a website and enter data into a form, contact a company, whatever it is that has boxes where you can type, in most cases, you are interacting with a database. SQL injection allows you to execute commands directly to that database named queries. This enables you to extract data, modify it, or add to it. This is extremely easy to avoid with some checks, preventing some characters from being sent to the server, among other things, but Vtech did not implement them. The information was not sold, it was not leaked, or anything like that, as if the hacker just wanted to see if he could accomplish it and gave notice to the world through Motherboard magazine. Had it been leaked or used with malicious intent, it could have been devastating for the company and the users. Vtech suffered severely from this attack, losing millions in stock market value, and the FTC fined the company $650,000. This was the first famous case of Slipstream, who was arrested in late 2015, aged 21. Not having leaked the information or sold it played in his favor, and he was released when Vtech decided not to press charges against him. If you've seen the past videos I've posted about hacks, you know the story doesn't stop there. Let's go back to 2017. In January of that year, a skilled hacker managed to break into a Microsoft server. With this access, he uploaded several web shells, which are files with code that allow an attacker to take control of a server via shell, the command line like MS-DOS, or the Linux or Unix terminal. This gives the attacker the possibility to execute commands remotely. The hacker? Slipstream again. He took control of the Microsoft server, downloaded about 43,000 files, including test versions of Windows, not only desktop versions, but also Windows Server ones, thus posing a security risk. Not satisfied with this, Slipstream gave access to the servers through an IRC server or Internet Relay Chat, where he shared with other hackers to enter and steal information as if it was nothing at all. This led to hackers from France, Germany, the United Arab Emirates, and other countries to break into Microsoft. This time, Microsoft's cybercrime team worked together with the FBI and the National Cybercrime Unit to find the perpetrator. Zamis Clark, Slipstream's real name, an English native and employee of Malwarebytes Security, a cybersecurity consultant, was arrested in June 2017. Microsoft estimated the damage to be $2 million, but to everyone's surprise, he was released on bail. Sometimes when hackers are caught and released, they are banned from accessing computer equipment or the internet altogether. In this case, Clark was released without restriction. Well, with those measures, surely this wasn't going to escalate, was it? On April 15th, 2018, there was a post on 4chan that caught the attention of many. The Suzzers release group leaked the Equa Player Development Kit, a small device with Nintendo 64 hardware inside for the Chinese market, with the intention of going around the console ban on the region. Along with the SDK, unencrypted ROMs were also released. This was strange. Of all the things that could be leaked or hacked from Nintendo, why choose the Equa, a product that wasn't even sold under the Nintendo brand name? The answer to this question was something no one, especially not Nintendo, expected. Space World was an event in which Nintendo celebrated their franchises and their fans, announcing everything related to their brand. Hardware and everything that was to come from the Big N was revealed there. The 1997 edition was focused on a worldwide phenomenon: Pokémon. Fans got their first glimpse of Pokémon's future, which came in the form of gold and silver. 21 years later, on May 26, 2018, ROMs for these prototypes would be posted on a Discord server with a limit of 20 downloads. 5 days later, the prototype ROMs for Pokémon Gold and Silver from Space World 97 were posted on 4chan and 8chan. In these, it was possible to see initial designs of the Pokémon from the games, as well as mechanics and many other things. Nintendo wasn't sure where these leaks were coming from, and since what followed them was silence for almost a year, not much noise was made after those leaks. Perhaps they expected that they had only gotten access to that. To their surprise, they didn't. In February 20th, 2019, prototype assets for Pokémon Red, Green, and Blue were leaked. In June 2019, the Japanese debug ROM for Pokémon Diamond was released on a Discord server through the user Ganix. A debug build is the build used during development to test all the features of the game. It is not something playable, but it gives tools to access basically every module of the software and test how it works. Ganix was one of the 20 who got access to the Space World 97 ROMs and was now part of a select group that had more information and confidential files from Nintendo. It turns out that Zamis Clark selected these individuals to send them files he had acquired after hacking Nintendo. Yes, he hacked Nintendo while he was out on bail for hacking Microsoft after having escaped prosecution for hacking Vtech. And now he was using other members of the scene as proxies to leak these documents. Ganix was one of Clark's closest associates, although he knew him as Wacko. December 2019, Pokémon Diamond and Pearl beta sprites were leaked. March 2020, the Pokémon Blue and Yellow debug build appeared on 4chan, along with images of an internal Game Boy manual, the official Game Boy emulator, and the debug menu of the Pokémon Diamond and Pearl prototypes. April 2020, the lot checks, that is the quality certifications, along with their detailed spreadsheets of Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, 64DD, Virtual Boy, Game Boy Color, and Pokémon Mini appear on 4chan. That same month, the localization source code for Pokémon Blue and Yellow are leaked, along with the debug builds of Pokémon Gold and Silver. A few days later, the source code for Pokémon Gold, Silver, and Crystal appeared. At this point, these leaks had Nintendo's attention, but also that of the whole community. These files were too confidential and were not recent, dating back many years. But even with all of these leaks, the information that the public had seen was only the tip of the iceberg. May 2020 was the beginning of the biggest leaks. Among many other things, the source code of the iQuay and Wii software was published. The Horizon OS header files, the 3DS operative system, header files are basically the primary files of a software that are shared in various parts of the software code. The code of a cartridge that served to return the 2DS XL to its factory state. This can return the 2DS XL firmware to its first version, the Japanese source code for Pokemon Ruby, Fire Red, and Leaf Green, the debug ROM for Pokemon X and Y, the source code and documentation for the Nintendo 3DS, the title key generation script for the Wii DSi, Wii U, and 3DS. In July 2020, leaked source code for several SNES games, source code for Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, reached the internet. This became known as the Gigaleak. But it didn't end there. A couple of days later, source code for Nintendo 64 games was leaked, including a piece of unused code for Super Mario 64, where you could see several things that didn't make it into the game, including a playable Luigi. This became known as the Gigaleak 2. A few months later, the localization code for Pokemon Emerald and the full Wii hardware code also made it to 4chan. Then came the source code and development kit for the Japanese version of Pokemon Platinum, the lot checks for 240 Game Boy and Game Boy Color ROMs, and lots of Nintendo game documentation. On top of this came the demo and debug code for Pokemon Ranger and Mystery Dungeon, Pokemon Sun and Moon source code, repair tools and Wii factory software, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee Beta ROM, boot ROM versions of the Switch, the 2015 Switch development kit, and some files that ironically discussed how Nintendo would deal with and resolve hacking situations and how they would deal with hackers. The Pokemon Shield and Sword prototype were also leaked, among much more information on Nintendo games and consoles. And so 2020 came to an end. While all this was going on, Zamis Clark was arrested again. It was discovered that he had perpetrated the attack on Nintendo in March 2018. Nintendo became aware of this breach of their security in May 2018. Zamis managed to break into Nintendo's systems after breaching the VPN used to access the company's confidential development servers, where he was able to steal 2,365 users and passwords. Now 24 years old, he was facing court. While he was on trial, the leaks kept happening because he gave access to these files to a group of people. Zamis Clark pleaded guilty to misuse of computer systems to the Royal Court in London. Clark, however, did not serve time in prison. This was because his parents and lawyers stated that Clark suffered from autism and prosopagnosia, which is a condition where you cannot distinguish faces, including your own. They showed the judge a letter outlining their plans for their son's rehabilitation. As a result, the judge decided that sending him to prison would not do him any good. On the contrary, it could encourage him to reoffend once he was out. Zamis Clark seems to have given up his attempts to hack companies, but he has not moved away from computer security. Last time he was seen in public was at the Electromagnetic Field 2022, a UK technology festival, where he gave a talk on Windows boot security. It is estimated that Zamis Clark was able to extract more than 2 terabytes of information from Nintendo's servers, and we were unable to see even a quarter of everything he obtained. That's all from me. Thank you very much for your time and your visit. Subscribe, and if you want, you can follow me on my social networks. Links to everything in the description. I'm Alex, and see you next time. Bye-bye.